Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in this video, we will have one common React interview question, that is how to use styles in React. So we have 5 different ways of using styles or maybe to add CSS in React. That is the inline styling, and in the inline styling we have something called as JavaScript objects, in which we will create style objects. Then we have external CSS, then CSS modules, and then CSS preprocessors, that is Sass. Then we have CSS in JavaScript, which we will do with the help of the style components or maybe emotions. So let's start with the basic thing, that is the inline CSS first. As you know, in inline CSS, we can directly apply any style to an element, and these are basically used for small components or maybe for simple projects. So let's have the example of this. So let's say we have an h1 element. So to use inline styling, simply style attribute and then two curly braces, and let's say we want to change the color of this text to red, so simply red. So see, and let's say if we want to add more styling, then simply background color. Let's say we want to change the background color, so let's say black. And let's say we want to have font size as well, or maybe font family to cursive. So see, we got the changes, but for one element we wrote so much code. Let's say we have more elements like a button, or maybe in our web page we don't have only single elements, right? So we start styling each element like this. Then we will end up with writing plenty of lines of code for each element, right? So the drawback of this is it is difficult to maintain. If we will have so much code like this for each element, we will have a difficulty in maintaining this. So we have a solution, that is our style object, that is JavaScript object. It means instead of this, we can simply create style object. Let's say my style, and simply have like background color, let's say red. In color would be, let's say this time go with blue, color black. Then again font family, this time let's say impact. And then we need to use again the style attribute, and this time we need to give the reference of this style object that we just created. So see, instead of writing the code here, we defined a style object and then had our styling inside that, and simply gave the reference of that to our element. And with this, we can define our style once, and we can use it for multiple elements. Like if we want to have the same styling, we can also do something like this. Like for button also, simply style would be simply my style. So see, so it makes the component more organized, right? But there is still an issue with this. So let's say we want to have more styling, and what we will do, we will define the styling again and again like this. As in our web page, we don't have only single styling for our elements, we have multiple styling. So we keep on writing the styles like this. We will end up writing a lengthy code. So we will have lots of things in our same page only, in the component page. So which would be again difficult to maintain. So to overcome this, we have our external CSS, in which we will have our separate CSS file. So instead of this, we can simply have external CSS file, and simply pick the element. Let's say we have h1, so we can pick this element by the element name like this, or maybe if this element had a class name or id name, we could have picked the element with the help of class or id name. So h1 would be simply color as green, and simply give the address of external CSS file. So external example.css. So see, so with the help of this external CSS file, our code becomes more maintainable. It means we can define whatever styling we have in the separate file and simply give the address of that in our main page, main component page. So this way our code will be more maintainable. But here also we have a disadvantage, that is style clashes. So what do you mean by this? So let's say we have home page, about page. As in our websites, we don't have only single pages, right? We have multiple pages. So let's say we have a about page, and let's say we have a home page as well, and similarly we have multiple pages. So here I have a simple button with a class name as simply button, and then again in the about page we have one more button. So let's say the class name is same, and this time click me about. So we have two buttons, and let's import our about and home page. So we have our home and about. So let's say we want to have styling for this button. So we will simply create a about page like about.css to style our about page, and home.css to style our home page. So we have our home page and we have a button with the class name btn. So we will pick the button with the class name and simply give background color as yellow, and we will do the same thing with this about page button, simply with the class name, background color as simply red. So you will see that the style will override each other. So we need to add the CSS also. So first home.css, and in about page also about.css. So we got red color for both, like for home button and for about button. But we had yellow for our home button, red for our about, but we only can see red color for both of them. So this is known as style clashes. It means suppose in our web page we have multiple pages, and let's say we have same class name, then the style will override each other. But you will say that it is a common thing that we don't give same class name. We will simply say we will give this class name as home button, and here we will give about button, and simply style this as home button and this as about button. Then we will have our different colors, different styling. That's okay, no issues. But in a web page again, you don't have only single element. Let's say you have in your home page you have multiple buttons, like one button for your header, one button in your footer, or maybe one in your section, or maybe you can have multiple buttons. What you will do for your header button, you will simply give header button home, and if you have a footer button, then footer button, home, or something like this. So if you have multiple buttons and if you give these kind of names, as you can see, these are very lengthy names, and giving unique names to each of them will be quite hectic. So instead of this, you can use CSS modules. Now here CSS modules comes into play. So CSS modules are basically used for our medium to large projects where we want to prevent style clashes. And here we get the concept of scoped styles. It means whatever we have the styles like the CSS page, the styles of that page will be scoped to the component only, and other components cannot override or get affected by it. So let me show you. So what you need to do, simply to have the module, simply change the name of this like about dot module dot css, and same for the home page like home dot module dot css. And let's say we have btn only, and here also, and here we have our styling, let's say btn, and here also we have btn. So this time we need to import this in a different manner. As here we have our button styling, so we can give the name as, let's say, button styling from our home dot module dot css, and here instead of this btn, a curly brace, and simply button styling dot btn, as here we have btn, and the same thing here also, button styling from about dot module dot css, and here also curly brace, and simply button styling dot btn. So see, again we got different colors like yellow and red, and here we have, so in CSS modules, as I said, that we have a scoped style. So the style that we have here, that is btn, in the CSS module, that is home.module.css, the styles of this page will be limited to this component only. And as we have here btn, and here also we have btn, the same thing, then how we had different stylings. These are done as in CSS modules. The CSS modules create a unique class name for each button in the DOM. So this button would have been created with a class name as, let's say, button ABC, something like this, and the other button may have been created with a class name as button XYZ, or maybe something similar to this. So let me show you. We need to go to inspect and then simply see the first button, that is the home button, got the class name as btn and some random things. So what I mean to say is it creates a unique class name for each of the button, or maybe each of the styling that you will do in the CSS modules. So whatever styling you may have in this module will have unique class names. But here also we have a drawback. It means it increases the bundle size as it creates unique class names. So suppose we have multiple elements, as in our web page we have many elements, so it will create unique class name for each of them. So those unique class names will get added to the JavaScript bundle, which will increase the size of that bundle. So next we have our CSS preprocessors, that is Sass. So the advantages that we get here, are variables. We can create variables. We can have nesting as well as the important thing, that is the mixins. So let's see this also. And before starting this, what do you mean by this preprocessor? So preprocessing means what it will do, whatever code we will write in our Sass, it will convert the enhanced code, that is the Sass code, into the plain CSS that the browser will understand. So let's see these three: variables, nesting, and mixins. Then to have our Sass, we need to install the Sass like this. You need to use this command, that is npm install, or maybe I Sass. So I already have the Sass installed, and after installing you can check that package in your package.json. So I already have the Sass, as you can see. Then what you need to do, simply you need to create. So let's create a component. Then you need to create a CSS file. You can give any name. So let's say I have Sass example. Then the extension should be this time .scss instead of .css. Then let's say here also we have the button example only. So in CSS, in SCSS I should say. So how to have variables? Let's say with a dollar we need to have, let's say, primary color. Let's say we have some value, and let's say we have button padding 10 pixel, 20 pixel, and let's say we have here button class name as simply btn. So we can style the button as btn would be background color. So instead of this, any hard-coded values, like instead of having some value here, we can simply have this variable that we created, that is primary color. So simply and simply instead of giving values again in padding, you can simply have this variable, that is button padding. And you need to import the CSS in the same way as you importing the normal CSS. So simply the name of the file, that is Sass example.css, and we need to add that in our application, that is app.jsx. So simply import and simply here instead of CSS, SCSS, and you are done. See, so we got the styling of this button. This is the first thing, that is we created a variable. Then we have nesting. Then how can we have the nesting? So if I was using a normal CSS, then to have this styling like pseudo selectors, I could have done like button dot hover, and let's say background color as red. Suppose if I want to have more pseudo selectors, like this time button dot active, and again button dot focus. So every time if I need to have a selector, I need to use this class name like dot button active, dot button focus. So in our Sass, we get the advantage of this, like we have the option of nesting. It means here only we can have simply ampersand and hover. So background color as, let's say, yellow. So see, and here if we want to have more pseudo selectors, then simply again and active, and again and simply focus, something like this. So we got the option of nesting as well. So where these variables will be used, like this primary color, like when we want to have the theming purpose, it means like light and dark mode. That time you can have, instead of fixed values, you can use variables. Or maybe if you want to have dynamic values, then simply you can have this. Then suppose if you are using this variable in multiple elements, and if you want to change the color of that, you can simply change the color from here instead of changing it from each and every element. Then we have the main advantage, that is mix-ins. So how to have that? So I have created a separate file for mix-in. You can have that in the same file also. So to have the mix-ins, you need to have @ symbol, then mix-in, then the name of the element. Let's say we want to style the button again. So the button, and here we can pass the parameters like $symbol, bg color again, and let's say padding. So we have our mix-in, then the button, and parameters as background color, and again padding. And again we can use like background color, simply bg color, and again padding, simply the padding. Let's say have some more styling. And what we can do with the mix-ins, as we had passed the parameters, we can use this for multiple elements. Let's say here we have, instead of one button, let's say we have 4 buttons, and let's say the first one is primary button, similarly secondary button, and success button, and at last danger button. So primary, secondary, success, and danger. So what we can do, to use the mix-ins, we need to use include keyword. So include, and let's say we want to use that in our primary button. So primary button would be include, and then simply here we can pass the values, as here we have the bg color and padding as parameters. Here we can pass the values. Let's say for primary button we can have blue, so blue. So include the name of that mix-in button and value blue, and let's say the padding as 10 pixel for this, 10 and 20. And for secondary button, again include the mix-in name, this time gray, and the padding 15 pixels and 20 pixel. The same thing with our success button. We are only changing the values. So it would be green, and the same thing for this, like our danger button. Here also red, this time 30, 5 and 40. So what we did, we created a mixin name as button for our button styling, and we passed the parameters as for background color and simply padding. And we can have other stylings here, and simply to use that mixin we have include the mixin name and the different values that we can pass here, like for different buttons. And we need to use this file name instead of the previous that I have. So button mixin.scss. So see, all of the buttons got different styling. So this way you can have dynamic styling for different elements also. Like instead of button, you can have more styling for other elements. So what advantage that we get is it is very useful for our larger projects where we have complex styling, and it creates reusable components or maybe reusable styles. Here we have, as you can see, with the variables also, we are creating the variable once and we can use it multiple times. And as I told you earlier, this would be helpful in theming part, like for themes, dynamically changing the themes. So at last we have our CSS in JavaScript. So let's comment this out. So here in CSS in JavaScript, it means we can write our CSS directly in JavaScript by using template literals, that is with the help of this backtick. So let me show you that. So to use this, to use CSS in our JavaScript, so we need to install the package that is either styled component or emotion. So I'll go with the styled component. So I need to stop the server. Then simply we need to install our styled component, that is npm I styled components. So I have installed the style component. So let's check that in our package.json, where we have style components. Then I need to simply import that. So import style would be from simply style components. Then let's say I want to have the styling for our container. So const container would be simply style dot. Let's say we want to have this for div, then a backtick, and inside this simply the stylings that we need to have. Let's say background color as black, color as white, like font family cursive, font size 20 pixels, and let's say padding as 30 pixels. And to use this, we need to simply return our container. It will act as a component only. So the return would be simply container. Let's say hello from div. And I need to start the server npm run and dev. So see, we got our styling. So we can have this for our other components or maybe for our other elements also. Like here we have for container. We can also have the same thing for header, section, footer and all. So this we call it as CSS in JavaScript. So it is also useful for larger projects where dynamic styling is needed, and the same thing like themes and all. So let's have a very quick review. Like initially we have inline CSS, which is used for simple components or maybe small components and simple projects. We are having a difficulty of maintaining it. Then we created style object. Then again the same issue, difficulty of maintaining it. Then to resolve we had external CSS, but in external CSS we have style clashes. Then the solution was the CSS modules, which created dynamic class names. And then we had CSS preprocessors, which gave us advanced features like variables, nesting, and mixins. Then at last we had CSS in JavaScript, with which we can write CSS directly in JavaScript with the help of backtick. So yes, that's it for this video. Hope you understood this in a much better way. So see you all in the next one. Till then, take care.